Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voices for Mental Health. Real people, real stories, and real hope. I'm your host, Candace Schoner, and today I am delighted to have my guest, Coach Mak Estill, owner of Actionable Anxiety Coaching, to talk about anxiety, stress, and relationships. Coach Mak spent the first 30 years of her life as a student of health, wellness, and personal development. She struggled with stress and anxiety and now has a private practice helping others with, quote, adulting. Coach Mak, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you for welcoming me into your little corner of the world.
Well, you've gotten a little glimpse as we started to set up for this podcast, and I think it's ironic that we had some technical difficulties of all days when we're talking about stress and anxiety. So I want to thank you for your patience, and I'm looking forward to a really interesting conversation.
I dance very well with stress and anxiety now at this phase and season of my life. So I'm with you and we're rolling. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This will be good.
Oh, I think it's going to be great. So before we were just talking briefly about mothers as we tried to resolve some of our technical issues. So you said that the mother story kind of related to something that we were talking about. So share with me that story that you were about to tell me and tell the audience.
Yeah, well, as you and I were getting ready to kind of get rolling here and chit-chatting, I was rescheduling my weekly call with my mom, where we do every Monday, and just letting her know, we'll be chatting a different time. And I was saying to you, you asked, oh, are you close to your mom? And I said, yes, I'm very close. And you said, oh, well, we can, I'd love to dive into that, but we won't have time. I said, well, you know what, Candace, my closeness to my mom is a little bit relevant to your story because my father, who truly best father in the world, I'm blessed to still have him. He's well and alive and in good health. But I grew up in an environment that often anger was a part of the household ecology and dynamics. And so with that being a key part of the landscape that my mother and I interacted with often on the daily, normally multiple times a day, we definitely leaned on each other and became strategizers, allies together, and trying to always figure out and try to become more skilled in how to move into harmony as a unit, as a family, as individuals, as a mother-daughter team, as a wife and husband team, as a daughter to sister team, all of us kind of working together. So yeah, the anger piece, I know when I've been learning a little bit about you and your interest in mental health, I know anger was a prominent guest at the dinner table in your household. And so yes, anger has the capacity to move people further away from each other and be a source of disconnection, and also has the capacity to move people closer together. So,
and as we all know my story, it moved us further apart, which is, it's just part of life, and you learn how to cope with it, and there's different coping mechanisms. From that anger, I developed my anxiety and my stress, and I still am jumpy to this day when I hear loud noises. I don't know if you can relate to that or not.
Yeah, the jumpiness. I have been historically way more jumpy than I am now. There are some days where I'm still jumpy and I really don't feel any registered stress or anxiety running through my system. So that's always an interesting one. One thing I always like to remind myself is, we're neurowired to jump when there's certain stimulus, and in particular, unexpected stimulus. And that could be even as something as, we're in a social space such as our place of work, and a part of our brain knows to expect, let's say, a coworker coming up to our desk to talk to us. But if that coworker speaks in a volume and an octave that is a slightly unexpected, that little bit of a differentiation between what we're expecting and not expecting is enough to make people jump still. So, we're neurowired to be hypersensitive to our surroundings because our brain is always looking for, the quickest entrance and exit to survival, right? So I'm saying all that to give us grace. I mean, yes, we can have our backgrounds and our neurosensitivities based off of our, current diet or medication we're on or where we're at in our anxiety journey. I mean, the list goes on. But also at the end of the day, we are meant to jump a little with certain stimulus. So I always like to remind myself that and give myself a little bit of grace or give others, that kind of compassionate approach. Like sometimes we're not as jumpy as we think we are.
So I was just going to say that my anxiety got the better of me where I forgot where I was going in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you help your clients? And I know you have a whole process through coaching, an approach to helping others who are struggling with anxiety or stress. And I guess maybe we should start by separating those two. And I'm going to ask you, is there a difference between the two?
Okay. Stress and anxiety. Yes, there is a difference between the two, but anxiety is a form of stress. So that's kind of the relationship. You can have stress and not have anxiety, but if you have anxiety, you definitely have stress. It is a form of disharmonized and discongrued energy in the body. And that is really, from a very deep energetic standpoint, like that is what stress is. How do I help folks? So, I'll start with the basics, and the reason I start with the basics is because that's actually really what I focus on from the beginning to end with folks, because so often I have found, and Candace, when I say so often, I mean 98.976% of the time, so often, okay, that our perpetual struggles and strife and suffering around anxiety has a lot less to do with anxiety in and of itself, and a ton more to do with our understanding of anxiety, our perspective of anxiety, our approach to how we are identifying or not identifying with this thing we call anxiety, our approach, perspective, and participation in how we are talking about anxiety. That includes talking about anxiety with ourselves in our own mind, how we're talking about it with our coworkers, our loved ones, our girlfriend over coffee, our husband at the dinner table. And all of those baseline basics dramatically affect everything that comes afterwards. So I really love to start with people at the beginning, the starting line, because I call it the perpetual starting line. People spend months, years, decades, and then the decades stacked on top of the decades, stacked on top of the decade, working on their anxiety, trying to fix their anxiety, healing from their anxiety, overcoming their anxiety, crushing their anxiety. Oh my gosh, the list of rhetoric and adjectives and descriptors I could use go on and on and on. And oftentimes, the reason it's so prolonged is people are dabbling and doing in a variety of things, the medication, the yoga, the meditation, they're reading the books, and all of that is often very well intended, but the order of operations is often the least advantageous to getting them to where they want to go and in a much more timely way. So what ends up happening, they kind of always hovering and dancing along the starting line. They're always kind of just living on this starting line of, I know I experience anxiety. I have anxiety every day. But I just don't feel like it's getting better. I've tried all the things. Oh gosh, now I'm tired of doing all the things. It's the same rhetoric, slightly different words, slightly different angles and colors, but it's really all the same rhetoric over and over again. There are millions of people that are stuck on the starting line. So what do? I really hone in and work on polishing out the starting line. Where are we starting, first of all? And we go there. That's where we go from.
Well, you just said people start out in the wrong order. At least that's how I heard what you just said. So you're saying that we look for immediate solutions to resolve that anxiety, and yet we're really not getting to the root of the problem?
Well, I would refrain, me personally, I would refrain from using the word wrong, because as you know, Candace, right? Like everyone's journey is slightly different. Everyone's internal makeup and all their ingredients that are needed or not needed and helping them get to where they want to go is going to be slightly different. But let me give you an example, right?
Please.
For both my own personal experience and my journey with getting professional help for my mental health and getting professional mental health services, as well as working with other people who have also been dabbling and doing the same. Most people that come to me, I'm not the first person they are coming to lean on for support for their mental health, right? Normally people that are tiptoeing in my world have seen anywhere from 1 to 10 people. That could be therapists, social workers, counselors, psychiatrists, you name it, right? And one of my favorite questions I love to ask, whether it's someone that's coming to me that has gone to 1 person or 10 people before, did anyone ever explain to you what anxiety is? Number 1, that's the first part of the question. Number 2 is, did they explain it to you in a way where it made sense to your whole brain? Like you really feel like you got it. Like you really feel like, you feel clear and confident in your understanding about what the heck this anxiety thing is. We hear the word anxiety all the time. You would be absolutely shocked, Candace, at how many people don't know what the heck anxiety really is, and they've been paying various mental health practitioners for months, years, or decades, and not a single one of them have spent the time really honing in on a conversation of understanding what the heck it is. But we've spent a ton of time starting to talk about coping mechanisms, prescriptions, you name it. We start spending time immediately talking about anything else aside from the thing itself. So I have people come to me all the time. I had a woman the other day who she's actually in her early 70s, has seen every practitioner under the moon. Not a single one spent the time to slow down and really talk about what anxiety is. So that's a classic recipe for disaster, because if you're walking around, waking up each day, going to bed every night, thinking about this thing called anxiety, experiencing this thing called anxiety, but never knowing what the heck it really is, my gosh, of course your process is going to be so much more prolonged. My gosh, of course your process is going to be so much more mysterious. And it never had to be that way. And never has to be that way moving forward.
So you start with the definition of anxiety, or explaining, I guess, how the body and the mind come together to create that stress, that anxiety feeling.
I do, but here's the deal, Candace, is I stick far away from this, from like a prescribed 1 to 3 sentence explanation of anxiety, because if a 1 to 3 sentence description and definition of anxiety would have worked for helping people get this nice, clear, holistic understanding of what anxiety is, it would have worked a long time ago. A lot of people that let me back up a little bit and say, and just clarify, a lot of people that have come to me, it's not the full truth that they've never been told or introduced what anxiety is. That would be extremely absurd. That does sometimes still happen, but normally a practitioner or the handful of practitioners they've seen has introduced to them what anxiety is, but it's normally a 1 to 4 sentence description. It normally involves something called the fight, flight, or freeze response. Candace, I know you've heard what this is.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so the thing is that these nice little quick definitions of anxiety don't really do much in helping people understand what the heck is going on in their body, why it continues to go on, why it's happening, what is there to do about it. And that's what people are really interested in. So they hear this definition of anxiety and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And if it goes in one ear and out the other, that means it wasn't effective. It didn't stick. Exactly. So when people come to me, go ahead, Candace.
I was going to say that I'm glad that you clarified that, because I think, and I've been in therapy, I think most of the people that listen to this podcast have been in therapy or considering therapy. And for all the therapists out there, I don't want anyone upset with us, because we know that you do probably discuss what anxiety and stress is to your clients. So I'm glad that you're making that distinction, that a 3-sentence or 4-sentence description isn't enough. You've got to delve deeper into it.
Well, I think that there's a certain craft in caliber in how we're using speech and rhetoric and storytelling and symbolism and metaphors and analogies to help the participant, the client, the patient's whole brain. So not just their logic, not just their conscious mind, not just their, smart 2 + 2 = 4 mind, but their whole brain, to really the craft and how we approach conversations of anxiety, I feel like has tremendously more impact oftentimes than the medicines and the morning routines and the daily, devout 30-minute meditation practice and all this other stuff that can be extremely helpful, extremely profound in creating a vibrant life for people. So I'm not shading or shaming any other tools, modalities, resources, methodologies, all that. But I am just so fascinated by how often I hear people proclaim, oh, you know what? I've been thinking about anxiety, getting help about anxiety, even learning about anxiety for a long time. And crickets come out of their mouth when asked, well, what is their understanding of anxiety? It's not there. There's nothing sticking, despite the fact that they've been so engulfed in the topic. And that's a gap. To me, that's a systematic gap. That gap shouldn't be existing anymore.
I agree. I am curious though, and I know for me, when I have an anxiety attack, the first thing people say is breathe. Can I just tell you that does not help me, kind of makes me a little angry. I'm like, I know how to breathe, and if breathing worked, I would probably feel less anxious. And I have tried the breathing method, and it does help me to some degree. But it's that instant trying to solve someone else's problem and provide them with a solution when you really don't know what's triggering that anxiety.
Yes, you nailed it. And if I could take a second, this is such a common experience. And I previously, back in my deepest days of panic, before I had any idea what the heck was really going on, and I did not have the words, language, or education I do now about the topic. So back then, I also, Candace, experienced the same thing, right? I was told to breathe, I would look up YouTube videos, people's recommendations from different practitioners. So it's always about breath work. Now, I would like to note, before I say anything else, I am the biggest advocate of breath work. I used to teach meditation. I used to study in an ashram for years. I actually meditated for 30 minutes this morning. Breath work is a part of my daily day. I mean, it is such an active part of my life, and I would promote, prompt, and support that for everyone. And I can talk blue in the face about how great all things breath work is. However, you started to allude to it very well, which is that, okay, if breath work and all its various forms and modalities is so fabulous and so impactful in calming the nervous system, reducing stress, reducing anxiety, bringing us out of panic, well, then why is it not easier? Like, why does it not work faster? Why is the results not guaranteed for all of us at all times? Well, I will tell you exactly why. If you are having a panic attack, let's just go with this. If you're having a panic attack and you do not have a clear understanding of what panic really is, then someone telling you to just breathe or to do some type of box breath work or to, do whatever breath exercise is a almost near guarantee that is not going to work for you. Well, why? Okay. Yes, you start implementing breath work, and especially certain types of breath work, you will get results. There's 100%, you are guaranteed results, but you are only guaranteed results within a timely fashion if you really understand what is happening in your body. That is why now, if today, it's only a few times a year, Candace, that I now have panic waves. They don't even go into a full-blown panic attack anymore. It's just panic waves. I can implement breath work, and it will immediately, without fail, bring me out of a panic or high anxiety ridden state. The reason it works for me is because my whole brain, both my conscious and subconscious brain, knows more about what is actually happening in the body. Then I recruit breath work, and then it's just an easy recipe for success. Most people are walking around with high levels of anxiety, and for those that, God forbid, experience panic, because panic is the worst of the worst, most people are walking around not knowing what the heck is really going on in their body and why. So when it later comes knocking on the door, they try to implement breath work, and it's not the thing that is going to really take them to where they want to go. And if they really understood what panic was to begin with, the fear signals that the brain is sending off would be dramatically less and within a very quick time period. And that's when the breath work can come in. I don't know how clear I was about all that, because I'm very passionate about the topic of panic, Candace. So you mentioned about panic and the breath work, and this is something I could talk about quite a bit. So I don't know how clear I was with that.
No, I think you were exceptionally clear, and I love the information and the passion that you have for the topic, because it's critical, especially what's going on right now in the country. And we're not going to get into politics, because I don't normally get into politics, but it's part of our daily lives. Everything that's happening right now is part of our daily lives. We got through COVID, very anxiety-ridden time period. People get through their childhood traumas, again, creates anxiety. So just because we don't have a whole lot of time, I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this, and probably will later on down the road, but because, we're about giving value to our audience and our listeners who are struggling with some sort of mental health issue, and I think everybody on the planet has anxieties. So can you give us a scenario or some tips and advice to the audiences besides breathing? What else can they do to lower that state or reduce their anxiety?
This is my favorite tip to give, if you will. I don't really like calling it a tip, but it's also going to be the audience's least favorite thing they've heard, because it's not intended, and nor would I want it to give you the type of high, palpable, tangible results instantly, right? That's the thing, is I have found that everyone that is suffering with anxiety is suffering, and often suffering so deeply, and they're so eager to not feel the way that they're feeling anymore. And trust me, I was there too. I was on the furthest end of panic and anxiety you can just about get. So I get it. We want relief, we want alleviation, but everyone has their hands out with a tip jar. Like, everyone wants tips to reduce their anxiety, and I get why, right? But here's the deal. I really refrain from giving listeners these quick little tips and tricks, because if those would have worked, they would have worked by now. And guarantee all of our listeners who would like tips or tricks for their anxiety have already been looking up, reading books, listening to other podcasts, in certain Facebook groups, trying to recruit tips and tricks. The deal is I would like to invite our audience to really start to play with and embody a consistent practice of, I kind of call it the 3 R's. It's when you are feeling anxious, and I don't care if we're talking the most extreme end of like a full-blown panic attack, or you're feeling just very, very mildly anxious, almost where you can barely feel it. Okay, so everything in between, doesn't matter. If you are feeling anxious, pause, get in touch with how you're feeling, your body, all that good stuff. But start to really take note of how you are responding extrinsically and intrinsically. So intrinsically can mean your thoughts, the thoughts you're thinking to yourself. It can mean where you're giving your internal attention to. Are you feeling your heart rate? Okay, well, now are you starting to really bring energy and start to really take notice of your heart, and you're giving a lot of internal directionality, right? So think about and take note of intrinsically what you are responding, how you're responding. Then extrinsically, are you pacing the room? Are you getting short with your partner in the kitchen? Are you starting to tremble your hands and drop your coffee mug?
All the above.
And then, say that again, Candace.
All the above.
Yeah, all the above, right? Me too. Even to today, this is less an anxiety. Well, no, this is holistically with my stress. My hands, I drop things a lot. I'll start to drop my car keys, kind of drop the pen, like I just keep dropping stuff. So my hands are a good signal that something's brewing. But anyhow, you're feeling anxious, you take note of how you're responding intrinsically and extrinsically to your anxiety, and then you get really honest with yourself about what result that is giving you. You get really transparent and really honest with yourself about what result that's giving you, both immediately and a little bit, into the future, right? So we're talking about what result is that giving you now? What result is that giving you 5 minutes from now, an hour from now, 6 hours from now, while you're laying in bed and trying to relax and go to sleep? And start to notice this more and more. You're feeling anxious. How are you responding intrinsically and extrinsically? Then get super honest about what the result of that was. And then lastly, get really honest about how often you're repeating that cycle. Because I have found that the people that are stuck in perpetual anxiety, it has way less to do about anxiety in and of itself, and it has a hell of a lot more to do with how they're responding to anxiety, how they're not being fully aware, honest, or critical of the result that's getting them, and then they're repeating the same type of responses, thinking they're going to get different results. Fast forward, you've had chronic anxiety for 30 years. and you're thinking that it's just the anxiety. But I'm here to tell our lovely listeners that it is not just about anxiety. It has a ton to do with how we are responding and being honest about the results and then repeating that process.
Can I say that is brilliant? And I have never heard it said that way, and I have been in therapy on and off for years. I love the idea of getting in touch with why how you're feeling at the time, and I'm not a very good at knowing how I'm feeling and thinking about my thoughts. I like to avoid them at all possible cost. But I think that advice is excellent. I'm personally going to try it at home. When I get stress and anxiety, I usually go towards anger, and that is something that I got from childhood, which I know is not good, and if people are around, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, well, and just so I'm extra clear for our listeners, I want that to be, an effective guidance or invitation for them to consider. Introspection is a bit tricky, and I know we probably don't have time to talk about it today, but introspection, and particularly excessive introspection, is actually a sign of emotional disturbance. So I actually do not want our listeners to, when they're feeling anxious, to just inherently just start being super introspective. But the thing is that most humans default to being very introspective for reasons that we don't have time to get into today. So my main point I was saying, or recommendation, is regardless of what you're doing, whether you are getting angry like Candace might, whether you are starting to pace a room like I used to do, regardless if you are just starting to think, oh, okay, now I'm remembering how, what my dad did when I was a little girl. And, oh, now I'm thinking about how I failed that test 10 years ago in college, and I just could have been a lawyer by now. And, oh, now, wherever your brain is going, or wherever your activity is going, just taking note of that pragmatically, without bias, without initial judgment, and then start to become more critical about what result that is actually yielding you. And we just start there. That's where I want us to start, because so many people have not been doing that. And you can polish out the skill sets of that later, but that's the starting line. We're amping up how we are approaching the starting line, so we can eventually get off the starting line. We need to get the hell off the starting line.
Well, speaking of the starting line, I hope that you will come back to the podcast again and talk about beyond the starting line to keep us going and moving forward, to all of us to get less anxious and stressed.
Yes, I would love that.
So for our listeners, would you please share how they can get in touch with you?
Yep. So for anyone that is interested in connecting and getting in touch with me, and hey, whether you're interested in coaching or not, I love helping people get to their next steps and the next place they want to be. I have lots of great resources, people in my network I can connect you with. So come and just have a conversation, come connect with me. You can find me at actionableanxiety.com. You can also just Google Coach Mak. Mak spelled M-A-K, Actionable Anxiety, and I will pop up somewhere. I have a Facebook group, I have YouTube, I have my website, I have my Substack newsletter, so I will pop up somewhere and you will find me easily.
And I'm so glad I found you. And on that note, because we are out of time, thank you, Coach Mak Estill, for being on Voices for Mental Health, and for all of our listeners out there. Remember, you are not alone.